Normally we live pretty small and pretty inexpensively, but not this month. This month, we wanted to find out what it would be like to live on a cruise ship. Hi there, I'm Timmy with Overthinking Retirement, and our channel is all about finding ways to make retirement more enjoyable and figuring out what we want our retirement to look like. If you're new here, my husband and I retired less than a year ago, and we're trying to figure out how we want to live in retirement. And one piece of that puzzle is figuring out how big we can live in retirement and how small we can live in retirement. Now, going on cruises would be the big in that equation. And so this week we took our first cruise. Now, we are living on a budget, $120 a day, roughly $43,000 a year. We're doing that because we retired a little earlier than expected. If you have any questions about what drove that or why we're doing this, check out some of our other videos. I'm giving detailed descriptions of what we spent week by week in our retirement. And this week we're going to enjoy some of the fruits of our frugality by going on a cruise. Now, on a tight budget, $43,000 a year, you would think you might not be able to afford luxuries like going on a cruise for 3 weeks to a month out of every year. But we think we can afford it. And here are 5 things that we've done for this trip that have helped make it possible, helped make it more affordable for us. The first is our flight. So flying to a different part of the country can be very expensive these days, and that's always been one of the biggest expenses when it comes to travel. Well, this year we came across a credit card offer. It's actually the second time we've taken advantage of this particular credit card offer. It's through Chase and Southwest Airlines. And what the offer is if you signed up for the credit card, they gave you something like $60,000 in Southwest points, and then also a free companion pass that's good for the rest of the year. So we signed up for this in February, and we've had a companion pass the whole year so that we could basically get half price travel, whether we're paying cash or points. The companion pass allows your companion to fly free. And Southwest is amazing. Their companion pass system is super easy to use. You just book your flight and then you add your companion, and it's just so simple and easy. So that was the biggest element. We just used points to pay for our flight to Miami and our flight home from Fort Lauderdale. Now, the other thing that we did to save money on this particular trip is we tried very hard to minimize hotel stays. Lately, you used to be able to find hotel rooms really inexpensively all over the country, but it's getting harder and harder to do that. So we tried to minimize our hotel stays in a couple different ways this trip. One, we took a very early flight out of Portland, and instead of spending the night in Portland like we would normally do, we just got an early flight and then we stayed in the airport. So it was not the most fun I've ever had. I didn't get a whole lot of sleep that night, but we knew that because we had a very early flight, we probably would not have slept very much the night before anyway. So why not just sleep on a plane? And that's what we did. So we didn't have a hotel that night. And then we also were able to use points to book one of the other hotel stays we had. And then we also tried to make it so that the cruises we took were back to back. So the first night we had to buy a hotel because we wanted to make sure that we arrived early enough to not miss the boat. That would that would not have been a good choice, to miss the boat. Like, you'd save a couple $100, but then you'd lose a couple $1,000s on the cruise. So we did pay extra for the first night, but the rest of the time we didn't buy for the night in Portland, and then we used points for another stay in between the cruise. Now, the third thing that we did to save money on this cruise is we really researched it to find the lowest price cruises very far out. So I probably spent about 6 months planning out which cruises we were going to take, finding the ones that were on the cruise lines we wanted at the lowest price. The website I use for this is called Vacations to Go. It's a really nifty website for researching cruises. It's also a way you can book through them. We chose not to book through Vacations to Go. We just went to the cruise line directly. We prefer to go directly to the vendor whenever that's feasible and the price difference isn't too much, but you can book directly through them. But their search engine is fantastic. It shows all the deals that are going on. You can search by the length of the cruise you want, which port you want to go out of, your dates, the type of room that you want, and the price per night. So I usually just looked, we knew we wanted to go on Caribbean cruises because our goal was to get out of the rain. And I just looked for what were the lowest per price nights on the cruise lines that we wanted to experience. Because remember, part of this was trying to figure out if we would enjoy living on the cruise ship. So we didn't go super budget. We went with some very nice cruise lines. We went with Virgin and Celebrity Cruises and Norwegian Cruises. So those are all kind of mid-tier cruise lines, a little on the higher end, and well worth the extra money. We also chose to stay in balconies on each of these cruises just because, again, we wanted to see if this was livable, and we were pretty sure that livable for us doesn't mean staying on an inside cabin where there's no light or windows from the outside. So anyway, put a lot of research into it, found these back-to-back cruises, and that really helped us minimize the costs. The fourth thing we did is kind of an obscure thing. If you like to gamble, you might be familiar with this if you go to Las Vegas a lot. There's this silly Facebook game called My Vegas. Now, we've been playing this game for years because we have family in Las Vegas, and so this game has been around for, gosh, I think at least 10 years. And you can accrue points just playing these silly game online in your spare time. You don't even have to be paying attention to the game. You can just run it to accrue points. But anyway, we have tons and tons of points on this My Vegas, and we've gotten free shows, free rooms, just lots of great value out of this silly game. And we noticed that they had a reward for Norwegian Cruise Lines. So we went on there and booked the reward, and that gave us $600 off the Norwegian cruise that we went on, which is a pretty high percentage off. I'm thinking maybe 25% off of the balcony room that we got. So if you enjoy playing games on your phone or online, consider going to Facebook and checking out the My Vegas game to get some cruise credits if you think you might like to cruise on Norwegian. Now, the fifth thing that we did was probably the most important, and it's our strategy for living these first few years in retirement and experimenting with these different lifestyles. We live very inexpensively in our day-to-day life so that we can save money for things like cruises and international travel. And what we've done is we have a travel trailer and we have some leased land in a campground where our expenses per night in this campground are only $16 a night. So having a home base like that, where we don't have a lot of expenses, say for property taxes, maintaining a home, worrying about what's happening to your home while you're traveling, the fact that we just have this little travel trailer that we're not that worried about and that isn't very expensive allows us to do travel without the expense of both the travel and your at-home expenses. It also allows us to sometimes have weeks where we actually live on less than $120 a day so that we could save for these more expensive trips like the one we've taken this month. So anyway, those are the 5 things that we do or have done in order to make this trip possible. And now I'm going to go over what exactly we paid for the 18th week of our retirement, the first week of cruising. All right, we always start with our fixed expenses, which for us are $29 a day. This covers our cell phone, our internet, our health insurance, our car insurance, and our charitable giving. And then when we stay at the campground where we live when we're not traveling, the fee is basically it works out to $16 a day. And then on Monday, we didn't have any additional expenses. So our total for Monday was $45. Then on Tuesday, we spent $36 on gas. So our total for Tuesday was $81. On Wednesday, we drove to Portland, which is the airport we were flying out of, and we spent $40 on groceries for snacks for the road trip, and then $35 in gas. And then we went out to dinner with our kids. That cost us $134. So the total for Wednesday was $254. On Thursday, we flew to Miami, and we had to stay in a hotel in Miami. It was not inexpensive. We had trouble finding any inexpensive hotels. So we spent $185 for a hotel, but because I have status with Marriott, I was able to get a room upgrade, which was very nice. It had a lovely pool, and then we also got breakfast the next morning. So not a terrible value, but I still don't like spending a lot of money on hotels. So that was our only expense for Thursday, other than our fixed expenses. So the total was $214. Now the cruise started the next day on Friday, and to calculate the daily expense for the cruise, I just took the total expense that we paid for the cruise and divided by 7, because it was a 7-night cruise. And let's see, the total for the cruise was $1,794 divided by 7 came to $256. And then we chose, well, we were going on Virgin, and Virgin doesn't have any sort of drink packages, but they do have a deal where if you buy $300 in alcohol credits, they give you an additional couple $100. So I think that's what we did. We spent $300 and they gave us another couple $100, and that gave us $500 to spend on beverages throughout the cruise. So our total for that was $43 a day. And then we also went and got some snacks and some champagne to drink in our room. They usually allow you to bring 1 or 2 bottles on these cruises. So a great way to save money if you are a drinker is to bring whatever the limit they allow because drinks on cruises are not cheap. So our grocery expense was $37. And then we had transportation to the port, and that was not inexpensive either. That was $59 for an Uber ride to the port. So our total expense for Friday was $424. And then on Saturday, we had no additional expenses other than the cruise and the alcohol and our fixed. So our total was $328 for that day. And on Sunday, it was also the same, $328. So our total for the week was $1,674, and our allowance with the $120 a day challenge is $840. So we basically spent double what we would normally spend, which I don't know, considering we were traveling and going on a luxury cruise, I think it was pretty reasonable that it was just double. So it cuts into what we saved though. So we overspent $834, and we have in our spending bucket the amount that we're saving for these luxury events or luxury trips. We had in our savings $1,091. So after taking out the $834, we ended the week with $251 in our budget bucket. So we have spent that down, but we expected to do that. It's not looking good as far as staying on track for the next couple weeks because, well, cruises are expensive. So we expect our budget bucket will probably go negative. We just hope that we can make it up before the end of the year. So that's it. That's what we spent in our week 18 budget. And those are the ways that we have tried to make cruising more affordable so we don't break the budget while we're experimenting with this lifestyle. We are going to make a video to talk about what we liked and didn't like about cruises and whether we think this is a lifestyle we could incorporate into our retirement plan, whether living on a cruise ship is something we would enjoy, and whether it's something we can afford. So stay tuned for that. And I appreciate your joining us today. You have a great day. We'll see you next week. Until then, I'll be overthinking.